At exactly 6 a.m., a single palace statement shattered tradition and rewrote royal history. King Charles, battling a silent health crisis, has stepped back. In his place, the nation now turns to Princess Catherine, not as consort, but as the crown's new compass. No crown, no throne, just duty, strength, and unity. What triggered this seismic shift inside Buckingham Palace? And how did Catherine rise from support role to sovereign force? Stay with us. The truth is breathtaking. The announcement that shocked the nation. At exactly 6 a.m. on October 2nd, 2025, Buckingham Palace issued a 42-word statement that jolted the British public awake. With the King's full knowledge and blessing, Her Royal Highness the Princess of Wales will now assume forward-facing ceremonial duties, the notice read. The use of "with the King's blessing" was both comforting and chilling. It hinted at trust, but also at finality. Within 15 minutes, every major news network interrupted programming. Britain had not seen a statement this short, and this serious, since Princess Diana's death in 1997. By 6:40 a.m., social media erupted. The hashtag #CatherineStepsUp began trending globally. The BBC interrupted a pre-recorded segment on Parliament to cut to live aerials of Buckingham Palace. Anchors speculated whether this meant King Charles III was seriously ill or had abdicated. News tickers rolled with breaking headlines. Even veteran royal watchers admitted, "We've never seen a transition like this in real time." What had seemed sudden was clearly planned in silence for days. Within 2 hours, crowds formed outside Buckingham Palace, just as they had during past royal events. But the mood was different. This wasn't mourning, nor was it celebration. It was a quiet, uncertain wait. Many clutched newspapers, their covers showing Catherine in navy blue, greeting school children in Nottingham just days earlier. How had it gone from a normal engagement to this? Police cordoned off traffic by 9 a.m., expecting crowds to swell past 20,000 before noon. Though the statement made no mention of abdication, the tone was unmistakable. A silent handover of power. Cameras zoomed in on the palace balcony, but it remained empty. Royal correspondents repeated the phrase, "a transitional moment," as if it were policy. For a monarchy known for its rigid control of narrative, this time the story broke loose, and the nation leaned in. As the public speculated wildly, few realized that the real shift in power began days earlier, far from public view. Deep within the quiet corridors of Sandringham House, an emergency had unfolded that left doctors, aides, and royal family members scrambling. The decision to elevate Catherine was not made in comfort. It was forged in a crisis. And while the palace's statement appeared calm, behind it was a health scare that would change the monarchy forever. The health emergency behind closed doors. On September 30th, 2025, at approximately 3:20 a.m., King Charles III experienced what sources later described as a severe immunological collapse at Sandringham. It wasn't just a fainting spell. It was something far more serious. Royal physicians were summoned from London and arrived by 4:10 a.m. under a veil of secrecy. No ambulances, no sirens, only unmarked vehicles slipping past the estate gates. The king was moved to the estate's medical wing, monitored around the clock. Insiders had reportedly noticed signs for weeks. At the September 19th state banquet, Charles had gripped the podium tightly. He canceled a speech at St. George's Chapel without explanation. Rumors swirled internally, none confirmed. But now, reality could no longer be hidden. His physicians determined that his immune system had failed to recover from a long lingering viral infection. The report: stress-induced complications, unfit for public duties, indefinite leave required. The king was told plainly, if he continued, he risked organ failure. One aide revealed that upon hearing the diagnosis, Charles sat in silence for 11 minutes, then reportedly said, "The crown must not limp." He had spent decades preparing for the throne, and less than 3 years wearing it. Yet, in that moment, he chose legacy over ego. There would be no formal abdication. Instead, a covert regency, with Catherine at the helm. Word spread among the senior royals within hours. A secure line connected Clarence House, Kensington Palace, and Balmoral. William arrived by helicopter at 6:45 a.m., spending much of the day in quiet conversations with his father. Those present said their discussion was brief, emotional, and firm. Charles made it clear, the future belonged to the next generation, and the public's trust had to be earned now, not later. That trust, he said, lay with Catherine. The king's choice was made in private, but the path forward had to be charted publicly. At Buckingham Palace, the decision-makers gathered. The next step wasn't just about who would lead, but how to lead. The monarchy had no precedent for a princess stepping into command while the sovereign still lived. But the answer, it turned out, was simple. Catherine, Princess of Wales, would take charge, and the entire royal apparatus, reluctantly or not, would follow her lead. Catherine is chosen to lead. The Emergency Council was called on October 1st, 2025, at 10 a.m. in the White Drawing Room at Buckingham Palace. Attending were senior aides, constitutional lawyers, 3 sitting bishops, and representatives from the Ministry of Defense. A black folder embossed with a golden C lay open on the table. It was King Charles's signed authorization, transferring temporary ceremonial command to Catherine, Princess of Wales. This was the moment the monarchy stepped into uncharted waters. The room fell silent as Catherine entered at 10:22 a.m. She wore a charcoal dress and no jewelry beyond her wedding ring. She did not sit. She read the document silently, nodded once, and said, "If my duty is to steady the crown, I will stand." Those words, later leaked to the press, would echo across the nation. In one sentence, she accepted the mantle. The vote among the council was unanimous. No opposition, no delay. This moment marked a historic first. Never before had a Princess of Wales been given such operational authority without the title of Queen. Catherine was now not just a royal figurehead, but a decision-maker, in charge of logistics, protocol, guest coordination, and foreign correspondence. Her leadership extended to ceremonial oversight and interfaith outreach for the upcoming coronation. It was, in all but legal language, a quiet regency, and it was already in motion. Palace staff remarked how Catherine brought immediate calm. She reorganized briefing schedules, canceled unnecessary appearances, and ordered a pause on all non-essential expenditures. She held one-on-one meetings with advisors from the Foreign Office and the BBC, sometimes until midnight. An insider said, "She didn't hesitate, not once." Her guiding principle became an internal phrase repeated daily among staff. "Let continuity be our comfort." And that comfort, for the first time in weeks, began to return. As Catherine took charge within palace walls, her husband stood between two worlds, between duty to a nation and love for a father. Prince William was now more than an heir. He was a son guarding his father's legacy and a future king anchoring the present. And together, William and Catherine formed a quiet force, guiding the monarchy moment by moment through one of its most uncertain chapters in decades. William's dual role. In the aftermath of King Charles's health emergency, Prince William found himself pulled between duty and devotion. From October 1st to October 5th, 2025, he divided his time between Sandringham House, where Charles remained under medical care, and Buckingham Palace, now the new hub of royal transition. Royal security logs show that William made 6 helicopter trips in just 4 days, a rhythm of movement that reflected the emotional storm beneath the surface. Each day, William met with Catherine at 8:30 a.m. sharp in the Queen's Gallery, where they reviewed updates on the coronation, public messaging, and foreign protocol. He offered input but deferred final decisions to her. "She steadies the crown," he said during a private meeting with aides, a comment that was later repeated by a palace press officer and picked up by tabloids. It wasn't just flattery. It was recognition. She was now the firm hand on the wheel. William's personal diary, selectively shared with palace historians, revealed a man torn by the gravity of the moment. He wrote of watching his father grapple with letting go, and of feeling both son and sentinel. Despite public pressures, he remained composed, walking with Catherine during public engagements in Yorkshire on October 3rd, visibly united. They greeted over 1,200 citizens, shared warm glances, and left crowds cheering, a calculated but heartfelt show of stability. Behind closed doors, they were a team of 2. Staff called them the Twin Regents. Catherine handled policy. William handled people. He reached out personally to foreign embassies, made calls to New Zealand's Prime Minister Chris Luxon and President Macron of France. At night, he returned to his father's bedside, often staying past midnight. As Prince of Wales, he was already the heir. But now, he had become the shield, guarding the monarchy while it transitioned from the old guard to the next. As William juggled his 2 worlds, Buckingham Palace itself transformed from a symbol of tradition into a battlefield of logistics. With every hour, the pressure mounted to deliver a seamless, dignified transfer of public authority, without ever admitting it was happening. And at the center of it all was Catherine, no longer just the Princess of Wales, but the executive force behind the most rapid royal transition in modern history. A palace transformed into a war room. On October 4th, 2025, royal aides began referring to the palace not as a residence, but as a command center. Catherine arrived at 5:45 a.m. Her security detail increased from 6 to 12 officers, signaling the weight of her role. By 6:30, she was chairing a 3-hour planning session that included military liaisons, BBC broadcast producers, and 2 archbishops. One staff member told Sky News, "We're no longer working for a royal, we're following a leader." Under her direction, the palace adopted a full ceremonial strategy codenamed Operation Continuity. Catherine approved 53 pages of revised protocol, which adjusted everything from order of procession to media camera placements and interfaith blessing segments. Her chosen motto, "Let continuity be our comfort," was printed at the top of every planning document. Diplomats, clergy, and security agencies aligned behind it. The chaos of early days began to dissolve into tightly choreographed execution. Perhaps most symbolic was her personal involvement in guest coordination. Catherine approved each of the 2,000 dignitary invitations, consulting directly with the Foreign Office. She personally phoned President Biden's chief of staff, assuring America's full inclusion. She restructured the balcony sequence to include younger royals, George, Charlotte, and Louis, to emphasize continuity. "We are not replacing the king," she reportedly said in one meeting. We are fulfilling his trust. Palace insiders noticed the shift immediately. Briefings that once took hours were reduced to 28-minute updates. Catherine declined personal stylists, insisting the staff focus on the work. She slept at Kensington Palace, commuting by secured motorcade each morning before dawn. One guard said, "She moves like someone with 5 years of training, not 5 days." The war room had found its general, and Buckingham Palace was no longer a monument. It was a mission. As the palace began to hum with order, the outside world started catching on. News anchors stopped questioning and started reporting. Hashtags evolved from confusion to celebration. And in homes, shops, and streets across the UK, a public once wary of disruption now found itself swelling with something unexpected: pride. But that shift in sentiment wasn't by accident. It was born from seeing calm in the storm, and from realizing that a princess was steering the ship. From panic to pride. In the early hours of October 2nd, 2025, British social media was ablaze with panic. Is the king dead? Why is Catherine issuing statements? Where is Camilla? These were just a few of the 15 million-plus tweets that flooded X, formerly Twitter, within 24 hours. Royal PR staff struggled to regain narrative control. The palace's calm statement hadn't eased fears. It had intensified them. But by October 3rd, everything changed. Once the palace confirmed King Charles's medical leave and publicly endorsed Catherine's role, the tide shifted. Trust was suddenly visible in the numbers. A YouGov poll conducted on October 4th showed 88% support for Catherine's leadership during the transition. It was one of the highest approval ratings for any royal since Princess Diana's peak in 1995. Newspapers changed their tone overnight, running headlines like "Our Steady Star" and "In Catherine We Trust." Outside Buckingham Palace, signs began to appear. "For King and Catherine," read one banner waved by a retired nurse from Liverpool. School children held up handmade crowns. Florists near Hyde Park reported record orders for white lilies, a flower Catherine had worn during her October 1st public address. Even former critics softened. Columnist Peter Hensley, a staunch Republican, wrote, "I oppose the monarchy, but I admire her restraint and dignity. She has earned our grace." International coverage followed suit. Le Figaro called her "l'encre du royaume," the anchor of the kingdom. The New York Times ran a front-page photo of Catherine meeting hospital workers captioned, "Grace in Transition." Online, commentators noticed something rare. Even the most jaded corners of the internet began posting support. Catherine's calm, unshaken presence had moved a nervous nation from whispers of collapse to open-hearted pride. The storm, somehow, had given birth to strength. While the public watched Catherine rise, one figure remained conspicuously absent. Camilla, the Queen Consort, had not appeared in over a week. Her absence, once overlooked, now stood out like a shadow on a clear day. Speculation brewed, press inquiries multiplied, and soon a new question emerged. In the rise of Catherine, had Camilla been written out? What happened behind closed doors between the Queen Consort and the Princess of Wales would soon send fresh tremors through the royal household. Camilla's sudden silence. Camilla, Queen Consort, was last publicly seen on September 28, 2025, exiting a fundraiser in Bristol. What began as a minor absence became a glaring question mark as days passed. By October 3rd, major outlets like ITV and The Telegraph ran segments titled, "Where is Camilla?" Palace sources initially claimed she was at Sandringham beside King Charles, but hospital insiders leaked anonymously that she hadn't been seen at all in the king's private wing. Then came the whisper that changed everything. "It's as if I've been erased overnight." That quote, allegedly from Camilla herself to a close friend, was published by The Times on October 4th. Public reaction was swift and divided. Was this a quiet protest? Or had Catherine's swift rise pushed Camilla into an unwanted exile? A joint statement was hastily issued by the palace at 8 p.m. that same day. The Queen Consort remains fully supportive of the Princess of Wales, but the wording raised more eyebrows than it calmed. Royal commentators like Richard Palmer and Jenny Bond noted the strategic vagueness of the palace's language. Supportive didn't mean involved. Fully supportive didn't imply active participation, and the absence of any new photo or video from Camilla led many to believe she had been quietly sidelined. Some saw it as justice, others as cruelty, but everyone noticed. It was an erasure without a word, made powerful by its silence. By October 6th, tabloids began speculating that Camilla may never return to a full public role. Anonymous sources close to her said she felt cut off and humiliated by how quickly events unfolded. And yet, she made no statement of protest. Some believed it was her final act of service, stepping aside so the monarchy could survive intact. In the shadow of crisis, the Queen Consort had gone quiet and left the spotlight to Catherine. With Camilla's silence echoing louder than any speech, the world turned its eyes toward the main event, the coronation Catherine had been preparing since day one. But this would not be a royal ceremony carved from ancient stone. It would be a coronation written for the times, one filled with compassion, symbolism, and unexpected grace. And when the first details were revealed, even the harshest critics had to admit, Catherine wasn't just leading, she was reimagining the very meaning of monarchy. The Coronation Reimagined. The theme was unveiled on October 7, 2025, Continuity Through Compassion. It was a phrase that seemed to distill everything Catherine had demonstrated over the past 10 days. Gone were the golden carriages and aristocratic excess. In their place, Catherine ordered Queen Elizabeth's favorite white lilies at every altar, a youth choir from Birmingham, and interfaith blessings in 5 languages. The coronation wasn't just a royal ritual, it was a message of inclusion. Perhaps the most symbolic detail was the object Catherine chose to carry. Instead of the traditional coronet, she would bear the Queen Consort's scepter, once held by Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother, and most recently, Camilla. The move was subtle, but clear. She was not assuming the throne, but the trust of the people. Charles would not attend in person, but would appear via a pre-recorded blessing from Sandringham, a moment expected to be the emotional climax of the event. The guest list was finalized by October 8th, with over 2,000 dignitaries confirmed. Among them were President Joe Biden, King Felipe VI of Spain, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, and even Meghan, Duchess of Sussex, who reportedly accepted a last-minute invitation, though Prince Harry declined. BBC reported record interest, with estimated viewership to exceed 28 million domestic viewers, making it one of the largest televised royal events since Diana's funeral in 1997. Catherine's wardrobe, designed by Sarah Burton, was modest and modern, a soft ivory silk gown with no tiara. She wanted the message to be clear. This was not a grab for power. This was a preservation of faith. The ceremony, scheduled for October 10th, would blend memory and modernity. Catherine wasn't crowned, but she stood at the center. And in doing so, she carried not a crown, but the confidence of a country. The day after the coronation details were made public, headlines around the world shifted from curiosity to celebration. What had started as crisis management was now being hailed as a masterclass in leadership. And the world took notice. Within 48 hours, global leaders, newspapers, and even royal skeptics began calling Catherine the future, not just of the monarchy, but of soft power diplomacy itself. The once shaky ground beneath the crown was beginning to settle, and at its center stood a woman who never asked for it. The global stage applauds. Parliament was the first to move. On October 9th, just one day before the coronation, Speaker of the House Lindsay Hoyle issued a rare statement. The House extends full confidence in the Princess of Wales and her extraordinary service under pressure. In the chambers, applause broke out, an uncommon sight during a week that began in uncertainty. Within hours, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak echoed support, calling Catherine the embodiment of modern constitutional dignity. Across the Atlantic, President Biden, Prime Minister Trudeau, and Australia's Anthony Albanese all issued formal congratulations. Albanese called her rise "grace under pressure" and promised bipartisan attendance from Parliament. In Canada, polls showed 73% of citizens preferred Catherine as the future monarch over any male heir. The monarchy's soft power, once seen as waning, had found new life, sparked not by tradition, but transformation. In the media world, the change was even more visible. Catherine's photo appeared on 27 international front pages within 48 hours of the palace statement. CN, Le Monde, NHK Japan, and The Guardian each ran feature stories titled "The Woman Who Held the Crown Without Wearing It." Editorials praised her restraint, her compassion, and above all, her timing. In a media age of scandal and spectacle, Catherine had made quiet resolve go viral. Even traditional European monarchies, once wary of British soft power, offered praise. King Philippe of Belgium called her a stabilizing face of the crown. Queen Margrethe Veikke of Denmark, in a personal letter, wrote, "In chaos you offered calm. In doubt you stood steady. You will be remembered not only for how you led, but when." Catherine, long seen as the steady consort, had become something more. The royal diplomat the world didn't know it needed. After days of tension, transformation, and tributes, there was only one question left to ask. What now? The monarchy had faced a potential collapse, yet emerged not just intact, but renewed. King Charles, though silent, had handed over his legacy. The world had offered applause. But what about the people at home? The citizens, the skeptics, the silent observers? The coronation was no longer a single day. It was the start of something else. A new chapter. A new face of tradition. The birth of a new royal era. October 10th, 2025. A date already etched in royal history. Not for crowns or oaths, but for what it symbolized. A peaceful transition of trust. King Charles's pre-recorded message aired at 12 noon, just before the final procession. "I leave you not with sorrow, but with certainty," he said. His voice frail but unwavering. The future is in steady hands. It was the symbolic passing of the torch. One final act of stewardship by a king who loved his crown more than himself. BBC reported 28 million UK viewers, making it one of the top 5 most watched events in British television history. Across the globe, over 100 countries broadcast the ceremony. For 3 consecutive days, the phrase "Queen in all but name" trended on X, with over 9 million mentions. Catherine, true to her word, never wore the crown. But every gesture, every word, every decision carried its weight. She was the monarch in spirit, if not in title. Public reaction turned from admiration to reverence. Candlelight vigils appeared across the UK. From Manchester to Edinburgh, from Cardiff to Belfast. Citizens left letters thanking Catherine for not letting the crown fall. Even younger audiences, once disinterested in royal affairs, flooded social media with tributes and artwork. One post from a 14-year-old artist in Birmingham went viral. A sketch of Catherine carrying a scepter over a bridge, with the caption, "She carried us all." In the end, what mattered most was not pomp, but purpose. Catherine had rewritten what it meant to lead. She didn't claim the throne, she carried its trust. The monarchy, now touched by vulnerability and tempered by grace, felt more real than it had in decades. And as night fell over London on that historic October day, the world didn't just see a princess. It saw the beginning of a new royal era. As October closes, the monarchy stands reborn, not through coronation, but through quiet conviction. King Charles's voice still echoes, but it is Catherine's presence that steadies the realm. From palace war rooms to global tributes, the message is clear. The future isn't waiting. It's already here. She may not wear the crown, but she carries the nation's heart. What happens next could define a generation. This isn't just royal news, it's history unfolding before our eyes.